Welcome to Native America Calling. I'm Sean Spruce. When the United States declared its independence from Great Britain, it carried along the fate of Native Americans. The story of Native people during the American Revolution has largely been pushed to the side during most of this year's anniversary events. But a handful of historians are using reenactments and live presentations to bring Native history to life. They want to help get across what the revolution and the actions meant at the time and what they still mean today. We'll hear from some of them right after the news.
This is National Native News. I'm Antonia Gonzalez. Prosecutors in South Dakota have dismissed charges against an Indigenous rights advocate. Charges stemming from a 2022 incident against Nick Tilson, CEO and founder of Indian Collective, were dropped. In a statement, Tilson said, "My freedom was not granted by a judge, a jury, or the settler colonial court system. My freedom was won by the people, the movement, and the ancestors." Tilson faced more than 25 years in prison, originally facing charges of aggravated assault on a law enforcement officer and obstruction. Ultimately, the trial resulted in a hung jury. Tilson maintained his innocence throughout, saying it was an effort to watch an interaction between police and an Indigenous member of the Rapid City community. Indian Collective spokespeople had contended the charges were excessive. In the same statement, representatives described them as, quote, blatantly politically motivated effort to silence a movement leader by criminalizing his actions. In response, Pennington County State's attorney writes, quote, the decision to dismiss the case was made after careful review and thoughtful consideration. The office adds they stand by the charging decision, saying while they believe the case was properly charged and presented, the jury's inability to reach a verdict was an important factor in evaluating whether further prosecution would serve the interest of justice. Alaska will receive about $1 billion from the federal government over the next few years to improve health care, but millions of that depends on the legislature passing several bills aligning Alaska with best practices for rural health care. Alaska Native people are much more likely to live in rural areas than other Alaskans. As Alaska Public Media's Rachel Cassandra reports, a proposal to make it easier for out-of-state nurses to practice in Alaska is facing fierce pushback.
When you boil it down, Alaska Hospital and Healthcare Association head Jared Kosin says joining a so-called license compact is pretty simple. He says there would be a set of criteria nurses would demonstrate.
And if they do, then they are issued a license and then they can practice in any states that use those same standards.
Proponents say joining a compact would help ease a nurse shortage across the state that's projected to worsen. Kosin says it may be simple to explain, but actually getting a bill passed to join the compact has been anything but.
It's just so snagged up in politics.
The last version of the bill was supported by most healthcare organizations in the state, but it was opposed by nursing unions. He says that created a toxic dynamic. And this year, there's new pressure on the legislature thanks to the Rural Health Transformation Program. When the state health department applied for the money, it told the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services the state would join the compact. The state's been directed by CMS to create compacts for other healthcare positions too. Physicians, emergency medical services, psychologists, and physician assistants. The state doesn't know exactly how much money would be clawed back if Alaska doesn't pass all the required legislation, but a health department official wrote over email that a ballpark estimate is that millions of dollars is at stake annually and tens of millions of dollars over the 5 years of rural funding. Shannon Davenport is a union leader and nurse. She says there are many problems with the nursing field right now, especially workplace safety. And she doesn't think the nursing compact is the solution to them.
It's not the golden goose. It's not the answer to everything.
Even so, most nurses support a compact. Almost 90% of nurses living in Alaska, according to a 2023 survey. The federal deadline to join the compact is at the end of 2027. In Anchorage, with additional reporting by Eric Stone, I'm Rachel Cassandra.
And I'm Antonia Gonzalez.
National Native News is produced by Koahnic Broadcast Corporation with funding by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Eighth Generation is a Seattle-based lifestyle brand owned by the Snoqualmie tribe, offering authentic native-designed blankets, jewelry, and gifts. More at Reservation Economic Summit booths 805 and 21 and at 8thgeneration.com, who support this show.
Support by the American Indian College Fund, providing millions of dollars of scholarships to Native students every year. Applications are accepted through May 31st at collegefund.org or by phone at 800-766-FUND.
Native Voice One, the Native American Radio Network.
This is Native America Calling. I'm Sean Spruce. When it comes to the American Revolution, Native historians are working to connect with the public, both with museum exhibits and at historic battlefield sites. Some of them aim to bring history to life using period dress, tools, and live-action reenactments to portray complexities and tragedies of a pivotal time in colonial America's young existence. Native people played a significant role in the war, with some fighting for the Continental Army and others siding with the British. For many Native nations, the war marked an expansion of European incursion and displacement. Today on our show, we're going to hear from those involved in bringing the Revolutionary War era to life. And as always, we welcome listeners to the conversation. That means you. Does your tribal community have a connection to the Revolutionary War? Or maybe you yourself have participated in a reenactment. You can share your comments or ask questions by calling 1-800-996-2848. That number is also 1-800-99-NATIVE. And of course, we have our social media platforms available to you as well: Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Threads. Let's now meet today's guests. Joining us on Zoom from Springville, New York is DJ Huff. He is a Seneca historian. DJ, hello and welcome to Native America Calling.
Hey, good afternoon. Great to have me on. I'm really appreciative of this offer to be on here today.
We appreciate you being on here, DJ. Joining us from Bowler, Wisconsin, we have Matthew Putnam. He is president of the Stockbridge-Muncie Community Cultural Committee and a tribal historian. He's also a citizen of the Stockbridge-Muncie community. Matthew, hello to you as well. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, and good morning to the rest of our guests here.
And joining us from Pennsylvania is Leon Sam Briggs. He is a historical reproduction specialist and a traditional teacher. He is Tonawanda Seneca. Leon, welcome to Native America Calling.
Nice to be here.
I'm happy all of you are able to join us today. DJ, let's start with you. How do you bring Revolutionary War history to life with your work?
Oh man, that's a really good question. I guess it kind of goes back to just having like a curious mind. Um, I guess when I was younger, I was kind of interested in like sciences and history and things of that sort. And just as growing up, it um kind of intensified a little bit. You kind of understand, who you are as a native person and the people's roles in history and as you get older, you understand a lot of those connections. So I think that there's a lot of interesting things that happen along that route, like understanding that not a lot of people out there may have talked to an indigenous person. Like my time in the army, for example, there was a person in there that thought Native people were extinct. Um, I've had to do some school classes and talking about Native nations, in Western Pennsylvania and Western New York, and asking them, where do you think these Native nations are these days? And some of the people in those classes, they talk about, oh, they've been, you know, done away with. They're extinct. They're no longer here. And it kind of broke my heart a little bit hearing some of that. And so I said to some of my friends, there's got to be some work to be done here. Um, the educational system really isn't providing a solid education for Native studies. And that's got to change because you can't tell the American story without talking about the Native story. So, a lot of things that I do don't really involve per se reenactments as so much like living history. So,
Mm-hmm.
in my definition of reenactments, it's kind of like uh, a visual play, as you will, of like historical events. Some of them are good, some of them are not. Um, but I think a lot of people strive to be more on the positive side and try to tell some sort of history. Um, and then, it's kind of usually like, I guess, like what they call a force on force, maybe, shooting back and forth with, colonials and native peoples and that kind of sort of thing is what I think of when I think of like, you know, uh, one of those things.
A
But living
reenactment.
history, yeah, yeah, reenactment. Sorry. But living history, I think is a little bit deeper. I think it delves deep into more history, more education, and just utilizing, maybe some of those, weapons, household goods, and, dressing as you would in the 18th century and early 19th century. And just to portray, like, what life would have been like back then and give the understanding about a time frame and the history that goes behind it. So it really does delve more into like the educational side when you're talking about living history rather than reenactments.
Sure.
Yeah.
DJ, um, so going back to the American Revolution in your work as a living historian, and there's still obviously elements of storytelling that you provide. What do you really want people to understand about the role of Native Americans during the American Revolution?
Wow, that's a really deep question. I think you have to go back even farther, maybe even like, 20 years or so during the French and Indian War, because the Revolutionary War was pretty much a result of the French and Indian War. The French and Indian War kind of made um, Europe in debt, primarily Great Britain and France. Um, so a lot of things that you think about with the Revolutionary War and leading up to it is, like the Boston Tea Party, and no taxation without representation starts, popping up and stuff. So all of that is a result of the French and Indian War, and the Revolutionary War is really kind of like the end result of these tight ends of the French and Indian War. Just trying to uh, uh, provide more money back into the economies of Great Britain and France. Um, Native people, a lot of people think about the Revolutionary War as, a Revolutionary War between um, the United States and Great Britain. But really, it was also a civil war, between, the United States and Great Britain, because a lot of those subjects here in the United States or in the colonies at the time were subjects of the crown. Now, Native people have been really tied to, Europeans since, the early 1500s, maybe 1523, 1526, around that time. So, there has been a lot of contact between Native people and, maybe Dutch traders and French and British, what have you. But it makes it really hard to really stay neutral during those
Mm-hmm.
times because the Revolutionary War at that time was also thought about having to have uh, a neutral understanding of what was going on because a lot of the native people were thinking of the Revolutionary War as like a dispute between a father and a son. So you don't really want to get involved with anybody else's business, anybody else's family business. That's a
Uh-huh.
general rule of thumb. I wouldn't want to argue about my neighbor about how, they're running their family or anything. So it's better to stay out of it sometimes. But, as time goes on, maybe maybe a cousin, maybe another family member, a friend gets involved, and it kind of pulls other people in. And that happens, in the Revolutionary War also. You know, um, a lot of things are happening. The French by this time, of course, are, not really big players in the colonies at that time. So the British are pretty much the primary source. A lot of natives are looking at the British as being like um, the more dominant people in the colonies at the time. The trade went away with the French a little bit, and a lot of those trade goods, went from French to being British. A lot of the arms was going, towards the British. The fur trade was, going really, really hardcore at that time. Fort Pitt itself was going between 250,000 to 300,000 furs, primarily deer hides, being processed at Fort Pitt at that time. So it was a big business, and it was all over, fashion, European fashion. Up here in New York's, and it was like primarily beaver going down the Allegheny River, down into the forks of the Alleghenies. You're talking more and more about deer hides, but it was all full fashion for felt hats, with the beavers, and then for knee breeches for the deer hides over in Europe. So a lot of those things that Native people are really trying to invest in is trade. And when your trade partners are having a hard time, your family is going to have a hard time too. So that kind of brings in, other factors. You're going to be
Mm-hmm.
siding with some people are going to be siding with the British, some people are going to be siding with the colonials. It all depends on like your region and your source of like information from
Okay.
European powers at that time.
All right. DJ, thanks for kicking off our conversation. I'm learning a lot, and I really like your analogy of comparing the American Revolution to a family squabble, and you might not want to get involved, but ultimately you might get pulled in because of some sort of a relationship. Really helpful and really insightful. We're going to take a short break. We're going to come back, and we've got a lot more to talk about today with regard to the history of the American Revolution and some Native folks who are very committed to telling that history accurately. Stay with us. We'll be right back. This is Sean Spruce, host of Native America Calling. You can listen in every weekday to hear the only national call-in show from a Native American perspective. We explore topics that range from traditional cultural practices to up-to-the-minute news that affects every American. We hope you can join us for the next Native America Calling.
Support from Davis Keelan Law Firm, a New Mexico firm standing with Native families suffering catastrophic loss. When tragedy strikes Indian country, we fight to restore stability, dignity, and justice. Bringing a voice to Native families and communities for 20 years. More information, daviskeelan.com.
Thank you for listening to Native America Calling. I'm your host, Sean Spruce, and we are hearing today from Native reenactors and historians about work to share the histories of tribes during the Revolutionary War. And I'm interested to know, what connection does your tribe have to the Revolutionary War? What are your thoughts on reenactments? You can join this conversation, share comments or questions. Just call us at 1-800-996-2848. That number again is 1-800-996-2848. We're talking with DJ Huff. He is a Seneca historian. And DJ, you take a lot of care in bridging collaborative relationships with tribes and the work that you do and sharing the history, living historian that you are. And last year, you were trying to find someone to perform as the Lenape leader, Chief White Eyes, for the Fort Pitt Museum. Tell me more about Chief White Eyes and how did this performance go?
All right, so Chief White Eyes was a leader of the Delaware in the 18th century. He had a lot of negotiations down at Fort Pitt. He's really widely recognized in Western Pennsylvania. And in 1775, he meets with Congress. And at that time, Congress, was just starting to meet. They weren't even over at Liberty Hall yet. This is before that even. So they were at Carpenter's Hall in Philadelphia. So he goes over and he talks to Congress a little bit, and he's talking about like how he's in support of the colonists, the colonies, and he wants better for his people. He advocates for farming equipment and even surprisingly, some missionaries to go over there and talk to them a little bit. Maybe some educators, some teachers, and White Eyes. He later on uh, signs a treaty with the British over at Fort Pitt. 2 years into the American Revolutionary War in 1778, 9, something like that. And in that treaty, it talks about trying to get a 14th colony of Native peoples and try to get representation inside of Congress. He also puts in there that he wants education for the children to go to universities and colleges. And the United States at that time, was heavily into the Revolutionary War. You were 2 years in, there's a lot of fighting going on, a lot of skirmishes, a lot of battles have already been fought and being fought right now too. And so the United States doesn't want to get pulled into like another conflict with Native people. So they try to make this treaty with the Lenape people, the Delaware people. And 2 months after that treaty is signed at Fort Pitt, trying to make that peace, that letter of understanding, White Eyes is going to be killed by some colonists. But at that time, they're saying that he died from disease, and because they didn't really want to put it out there that he was assassinated, because that would start
Okay.
another war, right?
Okay.
So that's the sad story of White Eyes. But you're talking about like what my involvement was with Philadelphia last year. Um, so I try to help out a lot with facilitating between Native nations and building bridges, and trying to get the Native story out there, because you can't tell the American story without talking about the Native story, and we all got to be on the same page. There's not a lot of us brown people around right now. We don't have that huge voice that maybe other peoples do. So we got to band together. So that's really important to me, and doing it in a respectful way. So we reached out to the Delawares down in Bartlesville and in Oklahoma, and because they're really good friends of ours, we've talked to them a lot, and the museum utilizes a lot of Native peoples that were around Western Pennsylvania in the 18th century. So you're talking about the Senecas, the Seneca Cayugas, which were in those times called the Mingo, the Shawnee, and the Delaware were the four major um, Native nations in Western Pennsylvania at that time. So facilitating that White Eyes depiction over at the Museum of the American Revolution in Philadelphia was quite difficult, because there was a lot of meetings going on at that time, and a lot of their people had to go to those meetings that probably could have portrayed White Eyes at that time. And so Fort Pitt and myself, we talked about it with their cultural preservationist, and he says, I don't have any problems with DJ, portraying White Eyes right now, and it's really a big honor to do that too, because I don't want to talk for the people. I just want to stick to the facts.
Okay.
And so in the clip that's out there of me portraying White Eyes, I don't talk to as White Eyes. I talk about the situation at hand, and what White Eyes was doing at that time, because I don't
Okay.
want to speak for people.
Sure.
I want to stick to, what was going on. I want to stick to the facts. I want to be honest about things. I'm not Delaware. That's
Yeah, that's a
foremost.
tricky. That's a slippery slope there. You definitely have to be careful. So it sounds like you really think hard about your role in a
Yeah.
project like that. Thank you, DJ. I want to bring Matthew Putnam into our conversation now. Again, he is the president of the Stockbridge-Muncie Community Cultural Committee and also a tribal historian. He is in Bowler, Wisconsin. And Matthew, you're a board member for Caesars Ford Theater, and this is an acting guild for Native historical interpreters. Tell us more about the theater and its goals.
Well, the goals of the theater are to, I guess, advance education that we're still here, Also, and portray history as it happened, as DJ, has relayed to you, as historically accurate as possible. Our agenda also is to when publicly mainstream media is portraying we natives, is that they use federally recognized tribal members in that capacity, as to not mislead. And we do a lot of smaller work, just educating in general. Each member, does little workshops when possible, or we work together to perform larger ones.
Uh-huh.
And so usually one week in the summertime we're out in New York, and we put quite a large one on at New Paltz, New York, and it's based in the 17th century and early America in Muncie territory.
Well, tell me more about what that's like. I mean, for somebody who goes and visits this event that you host, I mean, what will they see? What will they learn? What will be the key takeaways?
The key takeaways, I guess, is so there's two sides of the street. One side of the street is a Native American village, campfires, cooking, everything is historically accurate, dress, utensils, longhouse, bows, arrows, games, dancing. The other side of the street is all colonial at that time period. Shoemaking, taking care of animals, sword fighting, talks about slavery. So it's quite a very nice event to educate the public. Things that people would never see anymore, and it gets your mind going.
It sounds like it. Yeah, and the juxtaposition there of a native village and a colonial village, I'm sure that gets a lot of people thinking, a lot of questions. Matthew, let's talk about the American Revolution in your tribe's involvement. Because as I understand it, you folks were part of a militia fighting for the colonies at one point.
Yes. So I guess I'll probably kind of go where DJ went, and everything kind of piggybacks off the French and Indian Wars. And during the French and Indian Wars, the the Mohican people who had ended up resettling in Stockbridge, which was a praying town, had originally had two companies of Rangers and Rogers Rangers. So we had been heavily involved in all the what would you say, everything that was going on, I guess, between the English and the French for the last 80 years or so. And about the time that the American Revolution came up, our people were losing their lands to the British, and the Crown would not protect our lands, and we kept losing and losing and losing more lands. So finally, with the Boston Tea Party and people standing up, we decided to throw in with our neighbors and thought we would be better off back in the American cause and would hopefully not continue losing our lands. So we went from fighting under the Rogers Rangers banner to forming our own separate militia and fighting under the government of Massachusetts.
That's some really fascinating history there. And then after the war, your tribe had to relocate. How did that impact your people? And how many times would they have to relocate from this point on?
Well, to kind of sum things up, just to give you a little bit better idea, Stockbridge itself was a community of about 300 Stockbridge relatives, and there were probably about 100 males there, possibly. Then the rest is women and children. So during the Revolution, we had roughly 80 to 90 of those men fighting at all times. And after the Revolution, we lost at least 40 members to death, and then some just didn't return. So the majority of our male population was decimated. Our younger people, our warriors. And so after the Revolution, George Washington came to Stockbridge. He had a meeting with our chief. They ceremonially buried the hatchet on the side of the hill, which is more of a Haudenosaunee custom, but it's a custom, it's customary. And we were told we had to be relocated to New York. The Oneida Nation of New York had offered us lands and protection, and so therefore we had to uproot and move to New York. From New York, we moved on to Indiana. From Indiana, we moved up to Missouri, Wisconsin. We were moved 3 times in Wisconsin. We were moved down, some of us moved to Red Wing, Minnesota, some down to Leavenworth, Kansas, and then others mixed in with the Delaware Tribe of Indians and the Swan Creek Band of Ojibwe. So we always say we're moved 7 times, but I guess we're all moving in 7 different directions, even though there's 4.
Yeah, geez. Phone number is 1-800-996-2848 for any listeners who would like to join this conversation now. Living history, reenactments, the Revolutionary War. Interested in hearing some listeners' thoughts with regard to how this history can be told and innovative, creative ways to tell it. And we have guests on the show right now who have committed their careers to doing just that. And our next guest, Leon Sam Briggs, joins us now from Pennsylvania. He is a traditional teacher and also a historical reproduction specialist. He is Tonawanda Seneca. And Leon, you have a busy schedule this year with America 250, all the celebrations going on. And you were also involved in the bicentennial events that occurred 50 years ago. I remember those as a kid, 1976. Tell me more, though. Do you see a change in the level of interest that people have in learning about the roles of Native people during the American Revolution? And again, thinking back to the bicentennial in 1976 and what we're dealing with today here in 2026.
There's a lot of similarities, but there's a lot of things that have changed. I know, like in '76, when we did, we actually a number of some of our chiefs, some of our elders and stuff went down to Waterford, Pennsylvania, where Fort LaBeouf is, and we actually did 3 days of dance and education ceremonies there, and talked about our traditional upbringing. And so one of the things that they did, like I said, doing the dances and telling the stories and, giving, trying to correct that, like the biggest thing was they were still always referring to us as Iroquois or Iroquois and about using the Haudenosaunee. And so
during that time, there was a lot of reenactors, especially native reenactors, but a lot of them were poorly dressed. A lot of them were wearing, Western type outfits in attire. So I do everything from traditional brain tanning, to quill work, to bead work. I build birch bark canoes, and in this year coming up here, I'll be at probably 6 different forts around the country doing demonstrations. But one of the things that we see now is the education part. And just, like DJ said, there's so much fallacy in upbringing of our people. And I've heard it here. I was speaking at a school, and the Mennonite community asked that their children be excused for that day because they knew that it was a lie, because all the Indians were dead. And it was when they forwarded me that email, I looked at that and I was like, there's a lot of room for education. But one of the things that we see is, educating in using, especially with our language, our food, our way of life.
Okay.
When a lot of times when you see that, our food is one of our foundations of our life.
Leon, we're going to take a short break. We'll come back. We'll continue this conversation, and we have the phone lines open for guests who would like to join us. 1-800-99-NATIVE.
Support by the Gathering of Nations Powwow. The last dance is this April 24th and 25th at Expo, New Mexico. See the outgoing of current Miss Indian World, Dania Wawasuk, Saturday, April 25th. Tickets at gatheringofnations.com and at the gates.
Kaufman & Associates has over 35 years of experience serving Indian country, supporting growth, transformation, and sustainability of tribal programs. More at kaufmaninc.com, KAUFFMANINC.com.
Thank you for listening to Native America Calling. Let's continue this conversation about reenacting the role of Native people during the American Revolutionary War. You can join the conversation at 1-800-996-2848. You can also continue this conversation by posting comments on our website, nativeamericacalling.com, and our various social media pages, Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Threads. Let's go to the phones. We have Jen, who was listening online in East Texas. Hi, Jen. You're on the air.
Thank you so much, Sean. I'm really enjoying this program because I appreciate that more and more Native Americans are participating with the reenactment, and I really have to suggest a book to both of these wonderful people that are speaking today, because it would be very helpful in even more. One book I have that I've really appreciated was written by Ned Blackhawk, and he writes a book called The Rediscovery of America, and he talks about the Revolutionary War as well as all up to date, and it gives all those sources of his work and facts. And then I know that in my resource study and research, I've discovered that the Cherokee were another group that decided to stay out of the Revolutionary War because they thought it was like between Britain and their children, And then the Cherokee got involved with Andrew Jackson in the New Orleans battle because they were afraid their property they thought they'd be able to keep their property. And usually, like this gentleman has said, it's always about hopefully being able to keep their properties. So thank you so much. And I could actually attach these books somewhere in an email to you, Sean, and you could share them if you like.
Do that. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of us are familiar with Ned Blackhawk's work, and we've interviewed him here on the show and highlighted some of his books. But yeah, my contact info, Jen. Drop me a line anytime. You know that.
Right. And this one particular one about Jackson Land is written by Steve Inskeep, who was with PBS, but he actually does the facts and he proves where he got his work and he tells it. It's unusual for me to take a book that's not written by a Native American, but he did a really good job.
Oh, good. Okay. All right. Looking forward to your communication, Jen. Thanks again for calling in. Let's go back to Leon Sam Briggs, Tonawanda Seneca traditional teacher and a reproduction specialist. And Leon, before we went to break, you were talking about just how much work you do. You'll be at 6 different forts this year doing demonstrations, educating people. And I'm just interested in knowing what all goes into producing these reenactments that you work on. And what is it that really draws them in? What do people want to see? What do they want to learn?
Well, one of the things I attend the reenactments, but I'm like DJ said, I am a living historian. As a traditional Haudenosaunee of the Longhouse, we don't really believe in reenacting war because we're asking to bring that back. But as as we're setting things up, one of the big things is correcting history, correcting a lot of the outfits and stuff that people wore, and being period correct and historically accurate. I know, when we're doing things, we can refer to Mike Galvin or Jamie Jacobs, some of these guys that are have done some of these high quality crafts, and then having people like DJ and some of these other guys out here, working, to try to, keep everything accurate. That's one of the big things that we see. I know now there's a big influx of I guess private ownership of a lot of these museums, especially in Pennsylvania with the PHMC. They have sold off quite a few of these museums and historical sites to private ownership. And so it's a good thing and it's a bad thing. But when you look at that and you see how these productions and how these things are going, having the accuracy, having people that have the knowledge, like I said, I do a lot of traditional work, but I also live that life. Like right now, I'm in the middle of the woods on my trap line, and beaver trapping, but I use them, I harvest them, but I use every part of it, and that's one of the things when we're teaching. That the natives believed in using everything, where there was a lot of waste by a lot of the European societies. In Pennsylvania, William Penn, their biggest thing was, like DJ was saying, with the deer hides. They completely annihilated areas along the Allegheny, and just to take the bark for the tannic acid. So when you look at them and you see these things in the way they happen, we're trying to correct history. We're not trying to relive it. But also, we need to try to teach people to learn from their mistakes.
Sure. Leon, I want to ask you more about the importance of maintaining accuracy and authenticity in the work that you do, because you were involved in a reenactment on the Battle of Bushy Run, or a living history presentation, perhaps I should say, on the Battle of Bushy Run in Pennsylvania. And that event, it did receive some scrutiny for the use of non-Native people who were portraying Native Americans. Is that an issue for you? And if so, how do you address it?
Like I said, there's pluses and minuses. One of the things that we did with Bushy Run was, having quality reenactors and having their outfits and their everything period correct. Unfortunately, there's a lot of reenactors want paid. A lot of these places could not do, their reenactments if they paid for the reenactors. So working with some of these people that are non-native, that have taken the time, to do produce a quality kit, having everything period correct, and then talking with them. One, as first person, what are you going to portray and who are you going to portray? Are you portraying just like a native, captive or a warrior? But when you get people that want to portray particular people, then you look at that part of it, and that part has to be really scrutinized. Because, exactly like DJ said, when you're getting out there, I talked about the speech and stuff with Sachem Guinea of what the 4th of July meant to Native Americans. And we had a lot of protests because the people were like, well, the natives just wanted their land back. And I said, well, no, that he was trying to explain, why, we were in that position. And so when you're looking at things like that and you're working, in first person, or you're working, trying to develop, who you're going to play or who you're going to portray, that's the big thing. Bushy Run was the first place, to actually remove Iroquois from there. In this last year, they actually they had what was Iroquois Hill where the battle was, and they redid it, and now it's Haudenosaunee Hill.
Leon, let me ask you this, because I'm thinking somebody could be listening to the show right now, maybe a native person, maybe a non-native person, and they're thinking to themselves, well, geez, I would like to go and check out a reenactment or some sort of a living history event to learn more about the Revolutionary War and learn specifically more about the Native American role in the Revolutionary War, but I'm a little worried. I want to go to the right type of event. I want to go to an event that is accurate and authentic in the way you describe it. Any tips or any advice for how to find an event that is going to accurately present the information that folks want to learn?
Well, one of the big things is that, you can contact, some of these organizations and see what they're doing, see how they're portraying native, non-native reenactors. Do they have natives, playing natives? Do they have non-natives playing natives? What is their stance? I know I was contacted by Haudenosaunee, and here a number of years ago. Unfortunately, they portrayed a native that was hung, and that caused a lot of problems. But they didn't tell the story. And so going through, when we talk about the Pontiac's Rebellion and some of these other places, you have to look at the history and why things happen and what had happened. It's like when we talked about, George Washington. People are saying, oh, it's town destroyer. So, well, it's, actually, Haudenosaunee means that he bites on the town. And so when we look at those things, trying to get things, period correct, trying to get the language right. That's like the half king. There's basically 3 different ways to say Tenegrician, his name. And so when you look at a lot of these things, people need to do their studying, do some, before they go to, a historical site, look and see who were there, see if they have a land acknowledgement.
Okay. That's helpful, Leon. I want to go back to some of the history specifically with regard to the impacts of the Revolutionary War on the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. And I know at one time there was even an effort for the Continental Army to destroy Haudenosaunee villages. What can you tell us about that time, that era?
Well, again, we got to go back to the French and Indian War. And then as coming up through, that 1700s, 70s, 53 and going forward, And then one of the biggest divisions in our people, happened with the Sullivan-Clinton campaign and then the Battle of Newtown. There was Haudenosaunee people on both sides, and that caused the break. And our people, where part of our people ended up afterwards, trying to, over 5,000 people, went to Fort Niagara, trying to, to find refuge. And hundreds of them died from starvation. Others went to Canada. So when you work forward from that, and you look at some of the treaties, you look at some of the things that happen. So you have to look at the things that happen, to the Confederacy, and when and how we tried to make a stand, but we also tried to stay neutral in sometimes in them. But, after what they called this, Clinton, his scorched earth tactics that was sent to him on his campaign, to take all the food and, destroy everything, and that made, that was one of the big parts of the ethnic cleansing.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Leon. I want to go back to Matthew Putnam. We've got a couple of minutes before we have to wrap up. And Matthew, you don't do reenactments personally, as I understand it, but your son has done reenactments. And I'm just interested in hearing your thoughts in terms of how do historical reenactments or living history presentations, how do they teach and how do they educate and how do they inform in a way that reading a book or watching a documentary or any other type of learning experience doesn't accomplish? What makes them unique and effective?
So I guess a lot of it's hands-on. Like I told you, there are two sides of the street. There's a cooking shelter and a fire pit in one spot. There's a longhouse in another. There's a place to dance. There's a place for weapons, at the time period, or tools. And then there's wampum. We also set up, reading of wampum. So, like my son, or whoever's delegated, at the time, each person has their station, and specifically explains, the purpose of what's going on, or the tool to use. People just come up and ask questions as they're, going through actions, and actually we actually teach each other also at the same events. People who didn't grow up that way, they learn hands-on also, by working with each other.
This is helpful. Thank you so much, Matthew Putnam, DJ Huff, and also Leon Sam Briggs, learning today about what it takes to provide accurate history in the form of a living history presentation or event, or perhaps the word reenactment you might want to use as well, and how we can better educate and inform on this country's 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. It's a big year, 2026, and we will revisit this topic again, I'm sure, as the year progresses. But right now, we've got to wrap it up. We're out of time. So I want to again thank our guests and encourage you all to join us again tomorrow. We'll have another lineup of inspiring guests and timely conversation. Until then, I'm Sean Spruce. You've been listening to the one, the only Native America Calling.
The faculty of tribal colleges and universities support their students in countless ways. They say I believe and offer help before it's asked.
Hear that?
Fully, give grace.
That's everything tribal college faculty do for their students on Fast Forward. Because if one tried to say it in real time, they'd be here all day. They teach, guide, comfort, and connect. And for that, the community is grateful. Learn more at mostthoroughdescription.com. The American Indian College Fund supports this program.
They give extensions, cheer progress, share laughter, create calm, and allow reflection. They inspire hope, share wisdom, guide gently, validate healing.
Who protects Indian country? Amerind does. As the only 100% tribally owned insurance carrier, Amerind helps strengthen tribal communities by providing reliable insurance coverage and keeping dollars in Indian country. From property and liability to commercial auto and tribal workers' compensation, Amerind is here to protect what matters. Celebrating 40 years of serving Indian country. Learn more at amerind.com. That's AMERIND.com.
Native America Calling is produced in the Annenberg National Native Voice Studios in Albuquerque, New Mexico by Quantic Broadcast Corporation, a Native nonprofit media organization. Funding is provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting with support from the Public Radio Satellite Service. Music is by Brent Michael Davids. Native Voice One, the Native American Radio Network.